Hi, I'm Dr. Chris Stevens, and this is the Psychology to Live By podcast. Scratch anyone in the right place and you'll find insecurity. We're hardwired to fear rejection and to be suspicious of strangers. In fact, recent brain imaging studies show that social rejection is processed by the same areas in the brain that process physical threat. Yet, at the very same time, human beings are extraordinarily social. In our ancestral home in Africa, we survived by being hypersocial. As animals, we were hardly physically fearsome, but we were smart. We could cooperate, and thereby could ward off predators, hunt and collect enough food for all. Our literal survival depended on sharing and collaborating with each other. And at a visceral level, we still know this deeply. According to evolutionary psychology, social rejection would have been equivalent to a death sentence to our ancestors. Deeply felt fear of this would have been selected for, and those genes have been passed down to you and me. The genes of humans who didn't worry about this are no longer with us. So we still carry within us more or less the same genetic blueprint as our Stone Age forebears, even though our world is infinitely safer. So, we are very, very concerned with what other people think of us. It comes as no surprise then that social media is like crack cocaine for our species. Even when we know we shouldn't care what others think, we very frequently do. What are the implications of this? Well, they're numerous. One is we're great social performers. We're actors in a never-ending stage play. We spend much of our social life in managing the impressions of others. We play to the gallery, trying to lift our status in the wider village. It's the rare person who, in catching their reflection in a shop window, has not from time to time made some sort of adjustment to their face, hair, clothes or posture. Of course, with social media and selfies, this type of impression management has grown exponentially. And even when our mind is idling in daydreaming mode, our default mode network is generally engaged with social dramas. This network is a widespread and highly interconnected brain constellation that's constantly exploring social scenarios, creating endless what-ifs and action-packed movies in our mind. One result is, unless we have evidence that someone positively esteems us, they're potentially to be feared. But what we really don't like is not being able to get a read on what someone thinks of us. One consequence of this is that we're all in a dance together that we navigate largely unconsciously. When we're in sync with each other, we tend to relax. When we're out of sync, we feel uncomfortable. So, here's a thought experiment. Imagine you're in a largish room. As you enter, the door closes behind you, and as you check the handle, it's obviously locked. At this moment, you realise there's a stranger in the room. What would you do? Well, hundreds of people I've presented this situation to spontaneously say, well, talk to them, of course. I then suggest that the person looks normal, they don't appear to be a triple axe murderer or threatening in any way. However, imagine they don't respond to you at all. They look right through you. No aggression, no action, just complete non-regard. How might you be feeling now in this situation? Or further, if we were to shrink the room down to the size of an elevator, how might you be feeling now? Well, everyone says uncomfortable on a scale from nervous to downright scared. But why? There's no hint of aggression nor of danger. This thought experiment shows just how much we need our social moods to be reciprocated. We're deeply wired and programmed to pick up a complex array of signals, body language, vocal tone, verbal implications, and so on. We need to be able to anticipate socially, and if we cannot, we tend to interpret that lack of feedback as threatening. Now, this experiment is indeed strange, and it's unusual precisely because of this absence of our usual high degree of social coordination. Our fears are proportional to the degree of that miscoordination. And in ordinary circumstances, if we were to have this kind of strong negative emotional response to a stranger, we probably should trust our gut. The person may in fact be socially deviant. Our perceptual system may be trying to keep us alive, so we should proceed carefully. And this is an example of our fight-flight system being biased in favour of false negatives rather than a false positive. In our ancestral environment, one false positive, one overly optimistic appraisal of safety could have meant the end of us. But on the other hand, we should be mindful of this bias in our system when dealing with ambiguous situations. Knowing that we tend to overinterpret ambiguity as threatening, we should gently remind ourselves that our world is generally pretty safe. And then we ought to gather feedback as objectively as possible to get a read on the character and intentions of the other person. We should also proceed in the knowledge that we all have potential for good and evil, for kindness and meanness. Our own state and our own behaviours significantly influence the other person. If we're negative towards others, it makes it much more likely they will be negative towards us. It follows that we can have some say in how other people show up around us. We can change the odds by being an enabling space in which other people find it more natural to be their better selves. We can appeal to the better angels of their nature, and we can do this by striving to be our very best self. You've been listening to the Psychology to Live By podcast. If you'd like to know more, my website is www.drchris.life. And if you like the podcast, share it with people you like so they can like it too.